Am I wrong for telling my dad's wife I own the house she lives in? My 29 female dad married a woman named Maria a year ago after dating for 4 years. My dad wanted to buy a larger house for them to live in, but couldn't afford it without selling the home he lived in at the time, which is a unique property that he dearly loves. Although I now live abroad, I like the area he lives in, so my husband and I offered to buy a house there that my dad and Maria could live in. My dad agreed to this on the proviso that we not tell Maria that it wasn't him who paid for the house. This made no difference to me, so I agreed. So the house they live in is in my name, and they live there. I never planned to tell her. Recently, I went back to my home country and decided to stay with my dad for half my time there. And the whole time, Maria made it clear I was an inconvenience and that me doing things with my dad was annoying to her. But I'm not a confrontational person and I don't react too much, so I let it go. However, 2 days before I was due to leave, she came into my room and saw that I had my dad's dog on the bed. Now, this is a dog that my dad has had since before he met Maria and that I raised. Maria doesn't allow him on her bed, which is fine, but I've always had him sleep on mine. She flipped out, saying this was the final straw, that she'd had enough of me disrespecting her in her own home and that I had to leave. I tried to de-escalate the situation, saying we should just wait for my dad and sit down and talk this out, but she was adamant that I had to leave and that she had the authority to make me. After several minutes of me trying to explain to her that it was absurd of her to try and kick me out of my dad's house without talking to him, she said that what she said went, and since she married my dad, this is technically her house. I just chuckled and said, since my name is on the deed, it's technically my house. But there's no need to get technical, we should just wait for my dad. She was shocked and left the room. When my dad came back, I told him what happened, and he went to speak to her. There was a shouting match, and she didn't speak to either of us until I left 2 days later. My dad is mad, I told her, which I get, but since then, I've also got texts from her kids saying I was wrong for telling her and making her feel like a guest in the house. This isn't the case, she isn't a guest, she's a tenant. But so is my dad, and the only point I was trying to make was that she didn't have any business trying to kick me out of my father's house, let alone my own property. I didn't take it there until she did. That said, maybe I should have just left the ownership out and let my dad handle it. Edit. For everyone talking about Maria being a tenant and tenants' rights. She doesn't pay rent, so I don't know if that makes her a tenant technically. If it does, then as a landlord, I'm pretty sure I have legal recourse over the remodeling she did, without notifying me or my approval. And anyway, I wasn't there as a landlord, I was there as a guest of another tenant, and actually she did have several weeks' notice I was coming in any case. I'm sure it's a legal rabbit hole, but the only reason I use the word tenant is to say that since she lives there, she isn't a guest in the home. Now for the top comments. Now wrong. She internally struggled with wanting you to do what she wanted. It escalated due to her need to be the boss in her house with, you disrespect me in my house. You were gracious to allow her to save face several times. You offered options, call my dad. This type of personality will lose it once they know they don't have control. You did not make her feel anything. She created this situation. You again are gracious to allow them to enjoy a beautiful home. Maybe she feels deceived by your father, but the children need to pipe down. It was your first visit, and she was not cordial to you. The children were expecting that house to go to them eventually. I mean, then they would want to know it's not their mom's in that case, and would be pressuring OP to deed it over. OP keeping quiet only continues their father's lie to his new wife, who sounds kinda like a chore. My guess is kids are used to steadying her boat. Not wrong. In the comment, OP points out 1. It's a furniture owned by OP, and 2. They do not pay to live there. If I am doing someone a solid only to be disrespected like that, I'm done doing the solid. The stepmom is obviously a gold digger on a power trip. Yes, OP agreed not to say anything, but she didn't agree to being disrespected in the home she lets these people live for free in. Oh, for real, she definitely wants that house when he is gone. Or at least for him to leave the house to her kids. Not wrong, but good luck. Next story. Am I the idiot for returning presents my wife got for her friends' kids because they cost too much and impacted me buying what I wanted for my daughter? I work full-time, and my wife, 35 female, barely works part-time since she can't handle full-time work. Whatever she earns, she keeps for herself and her personal expenses, and I pay for all of our living expenses. I'm content with this arrangement. She does have access to my personal account in case she ever winds up needing a bit of extra money. My only stipulation is that, if it's going to be over $150, tell me about it first. In the 5 years we've been together, there have been a number of times she's helped her friend buy birthday or Christmas presents for her kids. Once or twice she's been short on what she wanted to spend and has taken from my account to cover expenses. Cool, no biggie, because she told me about it beforehand and it was never anything too extravagant. This year, her friend is needing help again, and my wife brought up helping her out and she may need to borrow some money from me. I told her that was okay, but to not exceed $300 this year. I have a 16-year-old daughter from my previous relationship, and with our financial arrangement, my wife is hands-off when it comes to finances concerning my daughter. Her mother and I decided to split the cost of a used car for her for Christmas. Then my wife did her shopping for her friends' kids, and when she got home, she told me she exceeded the limit by a lot, like closer to $850 spent. When my wife told me that, I told her she had to take it all back and get cheaper things, and that I gave her a limit and why. My wife insisted she couldn't take it all back, because she already told her friend what all she got, and her friend was over the moon. She felt it was unfair that less fortunate kids had to get less, so my daughter could have a car, and asked that I talk about delaying the car purchase with my daughter's mother. I told her absolutely not. Said she wouldn't take them back. When she went to shower later in the day, I took her purchases and the receipts and returned them myself. I was able to get cheaper, generic versions of some of the items, but not all. My wife is unhappy about this and has been cold after calling me controlling and unwilling to compromise. I think I compromise plenty, but my daughter comes before one of her friend's kids. Was I wrong? Okay. To me, even paying $300 for gifts for someone else's family seems excessive. But $850? It's not your responsibility to cover for gifts for another family. Absolutely, you're in the right. I thought $300 would be sufficient to split between two teens, which would allow for 1 or 2 nice gifts for each kid. It absolutely is. I never received $425 in Christmas presents from my parents. $150 is much closer to reality. And you guys aren't even these kids' parents. Not even just $850, but $850 of OP's money, plus whatever his wife spent of her own money, and whatever the friend spent for her own kids. How much money is being spent on these kids? Honestly, with that much, I would definitely want to look at the receipts and make sure it wasn't gifts for her. I did look at the receipts, and none of it was for her. The biggest expenses were a VR set and a digital art tablet or screen type thing. Not wrong, and I would kick her off the account. She agreed and she broke the agreement that was on her. And I would further explain that my obligation to my daughter far exceeds the wife's obligation to the friend, and that her failure to understand that, and that she took extra money from the account, is why she will no longer have access to that account. I wonder if wife's friend is his secret partner. I can't imagine spending that much on a friend's kids. Do the kids even know that wife is the gift giver and not the mother or Santa? Rant, gifts from Santa always irk me. I guess it's the long game to make kids behave for some time because someone is watching them. Yes, I read the kids are teenaged. OP is not in the wrong. Next story. Am I wrong for giving my son his own hotel room, but making my daughter share with a cousin she doesn't know? Me 30 female and my husband 49 male have been married for 2 years. We have a baby that is almost a year old. I have 2 kids, Rory 12 male and Emily 12 female, of my own, while my husband has 2 sons from a previous marriage, 13 males. My kids had to share a room since they were born, but once I got married, we moved to a bigger house and they could have their own rooms. My daughter was happy about it, but my son had a really hard time adapting to this. He didn't like being alone, and he got scared a lot, crying all night and peeing himself, but he eventually adapted to the new reality and has been more stable. A sister of my husband is getting married in Hawaii, and the whole family is going there for a big destination wedding. The idea was for the kids to share rooms by sets of 2. Emily would have to stay with one of my husband's nieces. Rory would share with one of his stepbrothers, and the other one with another cousin. But that didn't work. Rory says that he doesn't want to share a room with none of his stepbrothers because they smell bad. He told me to allow him to stay with his sister, but Emily doesn't want that. The only other option was to put him with one of the other male cousins, but he warned me that if it turns out that they also smell bad, he would refuse to stay in the room once we were there and go sleep on the rainforest. Finally, I begged for my husband to pay for another room, so Rory can be alone and I wouldn't have to suffer any more of this. But now Emily is mad because she says it is unfair, that her brother will have his own room, but she has to share with a cousin she doesn't know. I think she should understand that her brother has a harder time in this kind of situations than her, and not make everything even more difficult for me. Emily is a really social and extrovert girl. She didn't complain about this issue before. I feel she is just being petty, but now she is angry with me, and I don't know what else to do. Am I the idiot? Now for the top comments. Yes, you are. Have you ever considered parenting your son? Nope, too busy making a baby and new family with her much older and likely much wealthier new husband. They've done about as poor a job of blending this family as possible. There are so many stories on here of parents doing terrible jobs of blending families and treating their children well. Perfectly exemplifies the biggest reason why second marriages are more likely to fail than first marriages. My mom is on her fourth. Any stats on those? Yes, you are wrong. Your son gets rewarded for acting up, and your daughter is left behind because she doesn't complain enough. You are not parenting your son, and it's your daughter that suffers the consequences. OMG, that was me growing up. I'd be the good girl my brother would kick off and get his way, because it was easier for them to give in than argue with him. If I then kicked off because it saw how unfair it was, I'd be disciplined. You're the idiot. They smell bad is not a flipping excuse. Let him sleep in the rainforest. Or you could try acting like a parent. This. And do they actually smell bad? Seems like a weird excuse for a preteen. If they actually do smell bad, beyond the inevitable mild teen boy funk, that would be another parenting issue. These are OP's stepsons, and if they need to have basic hygiene reinforced, that's a job for both parents. Exactly. Those boys are starting puberty, and teen boys aren't exactly known for their excellent hygiene. The parents need to make sure the boys understand when and how they should keep up their hygiene now. Last story. Am I wrong for not allowing my sister to make her kids' food at my house during our Christmas party? I come from a broken home, so we have our Christmas with mom's side the first weekend of December. I 44 male hosted, usually my sister and I switch off host duties. My sister has two daughters who are incredibly picky eaters at 18 and 15 years old. My sister would come to family parties with a box of pasta and a bag of frozen chicken tenders that she will make for her daughters. I want to know if I'm in a hole for what I did here. I knew that is her drill with them, but I've always found it to be very annoying. Especially when I'm trying to cook, and she's taking up space making the pasta and chicken tenders. This year, I told my wife we will not be letting my sister in the kitchen this year, and the girls will have the choice of eating what I prepared, or not eating at all. My sister accused me of being a cynic, and getting joy from watching the girls be uncomfortable. I told her they are old enough to eat like adults. Also, the food I make is pretty standard. I do a filet roast, BBQ ribs, cheesy potatoes, stuffed artichoke, breaded cauliflower, ratatouille, and a salad. Certainly, some of these must be foods that an 18 and 15-year-old should be able to eat. Well, the girls sat and ate bread and butter while telling me that my food looked gross. I looked to my sister to calm them down, but she told me I deserved this, and it's not their fault for being picky eaters. I know I could have just let my sister do her thing, but it was the principle of the situation. I'm not sure if I was being a petty a-hole or if I had a legitimate reason to be upset. Edit. There are no medical conditions or food allergies. I made it clear to my sister in advance that I would not be allowing this. She decided not to listen. I did not anticipate this blow up, but I am willing to compromise. If the girls really won't try new things, my sister can make their food at home and bring it. No. You told your sister ahead of time that you would not allow her to use your kitchen. If she was that concerned, she could have declined your invite or fed her kids before showing up. Her kids being rude was uncalled for. That's why I think I might not be in the wrong. I made it clear to her beforehand that I wouldn't be allowing this. No, they are 18 and 15, not little kids. They can be picky, but you don't have to accommodate that. It's very annoying to have someone come into the kitchen and taking up space when you're cooking a big meal. They really had a third option as well, which is pack a freaking sandwich and eat that. Takes zero kitchen space or accommodation. Fourth option. Stuff your face before you get there. I have used this option many times over the years. This is how people turn 30 and still refuse to eat anything but pizza and chicken nuggets. No one is being forced at gunpoint to eat what you make. They can eat before or after the party if starvation is such a risk. Agreed. The girls need to get used to going places where their mommy won't make them a kiddie menu. They aren't picky eaters if they've never eaten anything besides what they could tolerate when they were 6. They're limited eaters, and that is 100% the result of their mothers coddling them. I wouldn't cater to them either. They're guests in someone's home. Unless they have allergies or sensory issues, they either accept the invitation and the menu, or they don't attend. I think they're old enough to start expanding whether they like it or not. If they start trying more foods, they will figure out what they like. My sister is coddling them. I can't tell you the number of times we've been at a restaurant, and she asks the server if they could make pasta and butter.